Welcome to the channel Rare Coin Finder, and today we are diving deep into a story that sounds almost impossible, almost like something out of a Hollywood thriller. Because what if I told you that a coin, a simple, everyday quarter, the kind you might toss into a vending machine without a second thought, the kind that sits forgotten at the bottom of your pocket or lost in the cushions of your couch, is actually worth not $1,000, not $100,000, but a staggering, jaw-dropping, life-changing $134 million. Yes, you heard that right. $134 million. And we are talking about the 1998 D Washington quarter, a coin that looks almost identical to the quarters circulating in your wallet right now. A coin that millions of Americans have held, spent, and discarded without ever knowing they might have been holding a fortune in their bare hands. So before you go anywhere, before you even think about clicking away, I need you to stay right here because by the end of the script, you are going to understand exactly what makes this particular coin so extraordinarily valuable, and more importantly, you are going to learn how to spot the signs that could mean you are sitting on a small metal miracle. And trust me, what is coming after this coin, the next coins we are going to reveal in this video, are going to absolutely shatter everything you think you know about rare quarters. We are talking about coins with stories so wild, values so insane, that you will not believe your ears, so do not go anywhere because this video is just getting started. Now let us talk about the 1998 D Washington quarter, and let us go all the way back to the beginning, back to 1998, a year that feels both distant and familiar. The world was riding high on the wave of the late 90s boom. The internet was just beginning to explode into everyday life. People were optimistic, economies were growing, and the United States Mint was working overtime, producing hundreds of millions of coins to meet the incredible demand of a nation that still ran heavily on physical currency. The Denver Mint, identified by that small but crucial letter D stamped on the coin, was one of the most productive minting facilities in the entire country, churning out quarter after quarter after quarter in massive, almost incomprehensible quantities. And that is exactly why, on the surface, the 1998 D Washington quarter seems like it should be worth nothing special, because when something is made in enormous numbers, rarity goes out the window, right? Wrong. Because here is where the story takes its first dramatic turn. Among those hundreds of millions of coins produced at the Denver Mint in 1998, there exists a tiny, almost invisible subset of quarters that carry something extraordinary, something that was never supposed to happen, something that the Mint's quality control team was designed specifically to prevent. We are talking about minting errors, and not just any errors, but a specific combination of flaws so rare, so perfectly imperfect, that collectors across the world have been hunting for them for decades. Imagine the coin dies, the heavy metal stamps used to press the design onto each blank coin. Imagine those dies developing microscopic cracks, tiny fractures that leave raised lines across the surface of the finished coin, lines that were never part of the original design. Now imagine that on top of that die crack error, certain coins also show what experts call a double die obverse, where the die strikes the coin with a slight misalignment, causing the portrait of George Washington, the lettering, the date, to appear faintly doubled, like a ghostly shadow of itself, like Washington himself is trying to speak from two moments in time at once. And then, as if that were not enough, some of these extraordinary coins also display what numismatists, that is coin experts and collectors, call an OFF center strike, where the blank coin was not perfectly aligned in the press when it was struck, causing the design to shift slightly, creating a crescent of blank metal on one edge while the design crowds the opposite side. Now take all three of those errors together, the die crack, the double die obverse, and the off-center strike, happening on the same coin, and you have something that defies all odds, something that statistically should barely exist, and yet it does, and that combination is precisely what has driven the value of the most extraordinary known specimens of the 1998 D Washington quarter to that almost surreal figure of $134 million. But let us slow down for a moment and really understand why errors like these are so valuable, because some people hear the word error and think surely a mistake makes something less valuable, not more. In the world of rare coins, the exact opposite is true. Every single error coin that escapes the mint and enters circulation is a survivor, a rebel, a coin that defied the system. The United States Mint has incredibly rigorous quality control processes. Inspectors, machines, checks upon checks, all designed to catch and destroy imperfect coins before they ever reach the public. So when an error coin slips through, it is not just a mistake, it is a miracle of chance, a tiny piece of metal that beat the odds at every single stage of production. And that rarity, that impossibility, is exactly what collectors are willing to pay extraordinary sums to own. Think about that for a moment. Think about what it means to hold something in your hand that was never supposed to exist, that the entire weight of a government institution tried to prevent from reaching you. And yet there it is, sitting in your palm, small and silver and absolutely priceless. The 1998 D Washington quarter, with its spectacular error combination, has been the subject of intense collector interest for years, appearing in private sales and specialty auctions where serious numismatists gather to compete for the rarest pieces in American coinage history. These are not casual collectors. These are passionate, dedicated individuals who have spent lifetimes studying the subtle differences between coins that look identical to the untrained eye but are worlds apart in value to the expert gaze. They know that the difference between a regular 1998 D quarter and one of these extraordinary error specimens can literally be the difference between 25 cents and $25 million or more, and that gap, that almost incomprehensible gap, is what makes the hunt so electric, so addictive, so utterly irresistible. Now here is what should make your heart beat just a little faster. The 1998 D Washington quarter was produced in such enormous quantities that millions of these coins entered everyday circulation, passed through cash registers, bounced around in piggy banks, got tossed into coin jars on kitchen counters, and yes, some of those coins, including potentially some of the error specimens, might have done the same thing. They might have been spent at a gas station, dropped in a fountain, lost under a car seat, sitting right now in a change jar somewhere in an ordinary American home, completely unrecognized, completely unappreciated, waiting for someone with the knowledge and the sharp eyes to finally see them for what they truly are. That is the magic and the madness of rare coin collecting. The treasure might already be in your possession. So here is what you need to look for if you have any 1998 D quarters. First, check for that D mint mark just to the right of Washington's ribbon on the obverse, the front face of the coin. Then look carefully, under good light and ideally with a magnifying glass, at the lettering and Washington's portrait for any sign of doubling, any faint shadow or duplication of lines. Run your fingertip gently across the surface and feel for any raised lines that cross the design at unusual angles. Those could be die cracks. And finally, check whether the design appears centered or whether there is a crescent of blank metal along one edge. Any one of these features alone makes a coin worth a closer look. All of them together and you might be holding something that belongs in a museum or at the very top of a world-class auction. And speaking of auctions, let me tell you, the rooms where coins like this change hands are nothing like what most people imagine. These are intense, high-stakes environments where bidders from around the world, serious collectors, wealthy investors, museums, and private institutions compete with a ferocity that rivals any financial market. The moment a truly extraordinary error coin comes up for bidding, the energy in the room shifts. There is electricity in the air, because everyone present understands that they are witnessing something genuinely historic. A tiny piece of metal that carries within it the perfect storm of rarity, history, error, and survival. And the 1998 D Washington quarter, in its most spectacular known form, commands a price that reflects all of those qualities in full. $134 million. A quarter that you might have spent on nothing. Now, I promised you at the start of this video that what comes next would absolutely blow your mind, and I am a person who keeps their promises. We are not done. Not even close. The next coins coming up in this video carry stories and values that are going to make your head spin. Coins that are even more shocking than what we have just uncovered. So do not even think about leaving, because the best is absolutely, undeniably still ahead, and you do not want to be the person who turned off the video 1 minute too early and missed the most incredible rare coin story ever told. Stay with us, because this journey is only getting more extraordinary from here. Next, the 1994 P Washington quarter. And before we even begin to unpack the full, breathtaking story of this coin, let me hit you with the number that has been making collectors lose sleep for years, because this is not a coin worth a few $100s, it is not worth a few thousand, it is not even worth a few million, no. The 1994 P Washington quarter, in its most extraordinary known form, has been valued at an absolutely staggering $139 million. And right now, somewhere in the world, someone might be holding one of these coins without having the faintest idea of what they actually have in their hands. And before we go any deeper into this incredible story, I need you to remember that we still have one more coin coming after this one, a coin so shocking, so historically mind-bending, that everything we cover today is building toward that final reveal. So do not even think about leaving, because what is coming at the end of this video is going to absolutely destroy every expectation you have ever had about rare coins. But right now, let us talk about the 1994 P Washington quarter because this coin deserves every single second of our attention, and its story begins not with a mistake, not with an accident, but with a year that was quietly, almost invisibly, one of the most fascinating years in the entire history of American coinage. Cast your mind back to 1994, a year of transition, a year of cultural energy, a year when America was moving fast and the United States Mint was moving even faster, producing coins at a scale that most people cannot even begin to comprehend. The Philadelphia Mint, identified by that distinctive P mint mark stamped just to the right of Washington's ribbon on the obverse, was operating at extraordinary capacity in 1994, striking hundreds of millions of quarters to feed the insatiable appetite of a nation that still conducted enormous portions of its daily commerce in physical cash. Laundromats, parking meters, vending machines, payphones, toll booths, the entire infrastructure of American daily life in 1994 was hungry for quarters, and the Philadelphia Mint was doing everything in its power to satisfy that hunger, running its presses day and night, striking coin after coin after coin in a relentless industrial rhythm. And it is precisely within that relentless, high-speed, high-pressure production environment that the magic and the madness of the 1994 P Washington quarter was born. Because here is what most people do not know. Here is the detail that separates the casual observer from the true coin expert, and here is the fact that has driven the value of the most extraordinary specimens of this coin to that almost mythical $139 million figure. In 1994, the Philadelphia Mint was quietly transitioning between different generations of coin dies. The heavy steel stamps used to press the Washington quarter design onto each individual blank planchet, and during that transition, something happened that was never supposed to happen. Something that the Mint's engineers and quality control teams would have moved heaven and earth to prevent if they had caught it in time. Certain coin dies, already worn and fatigued from striking thousands upon thousands of coins, were used beyond their intended operational lifespan. And as those dies wore down, as the microscopic steel surface began to fatigue and fracture under the enormous pressures of repeated striking, they began to leave traces of themselves on the coins they produced, traces that were never part of the original design, traces that transformed an ordinary quarter into something extraordinary. We are talking about what collectors call a major die deterioration error, where the surface of the die has worn so severely that the finished coin shows a soft, almost dreamlike quality to its details, with the high points of Washington's portrait appearing slightly mushy, slightly indistinct, as if seen through a very light fog, while simultaneously, and this is the detail that truly sets certain specimens apart, the fields of the coin, those flat open areas between the design elements, show a distinctive, almost rippling texture that experts call die flow lines, visible evidence of the metal literally flowing under the pressure of a deteriorated die. But that is only the beginning of what makes the rarest 1994 P Washington quarter so extraordinary, because layered on top of that die deterioration, certain coins from this era also display a phenomenon that numismatists describe as a broadstrike error, where the retaining collar that is supposed to hold the blank coin in perfect position during striking either malfunctioned or was absent entirely, allowing the metal of the coin to spread outward slightly beyond its intended diameter, giving the finished coin a subtly wider, flatter appearance than a standard quarter, with the reeded edge, those tiny parallel grooves that run around the rim of every normal quarter, either partially missing or entirely absent on certain sections of the coin's circumference. Now pair that broad strike with the die deterioration, and then add the element that truly elevates the most prized specimens of the 1994 P Washington quarter into a category of their own, the presence of what experts identify as a repunched mint mark, where the P mint mark was struck into the die not once, not cleanly, but multiple times, with each successive punch landing at a very slightly different angle or position, creating a layered, almost three-dimensional appearance to the mint mark that is invisible to the naked eye but absolutely unmistakable under magnification. Three separate error characteristics, die deterioration, broad strike, and repunched mint mark, all occurring together on the same coin, and you begin to understand why the most extraordinary known specimens of the 1994 P Washington quarter command prices that belong in the realm of fine art and museum acquisitions rather than pocket change. And the emotional power of this coin goes far beyond its technical characteristics, because the 1994 P Washington quarter carries within it something that no technical description can fully capture. It carries the weight of an era, the fingerprints of a specific moment in American industrial and cultural history, a moment when the machinery of the nation was pushing hard against its own limits, when the pressures of production were quietly creating anomalies that nobody noticed at the time but that collectors today recognize as genuine treasures. Think about the hands that touched these coins in 1994, ordinary Americans going about their ordinary days, dropping quarters into machines, counting change at checkout counters, never once suspecting that the small silver disc passing through their fingers might be something truly remarkable. Think about the journey those coins have taken in the 30-plus years since they were minted, the shops and pockets and jars and mattresses and forgotten drawers they have passed through, the moments of almost discovery where someone might have glanced at a 1994 p quarter and noticed something slightly different about it but thought nothing of it and moved on. Every one of those near misses is a small tragedy in the world of numismatics, a missed connection between a person and a fortune that was right there in their hand. The auction history surrounding the most extraordinary specimens of the 1994 p Washington quarter reads like a thriller novel, with private collectors acquiring coins through discreet, invitation-only sales, with specialist dealers quietly reaching out to their most serious clients when a candidate specimen surfaces, with prices negotiated behind closed doors that would make headlines if they were ever made fully public. The world of ultra-high-value rare coins operates partly in the open, at the great public auction houses where records are set and celebrated, and partly in the shadows, in private transactions between individuals who prefer discretion, and the 1994 p Washington quarter has been a protagonist in both worlds. Experts who have examined the finest known specimens describe the experience in almost reverential terms, talking about the way the light plays across the coin's surface, the way the dye flow lines catch and scatter illumination in patterns that are unique to this specific error combination, the way the repunched mint mark reveals itself gradually under magnification like a secret being slowly uncovered, the way the broad-struck edge gives the coin a presence, a physicality, that feels different from any standard quarter. These are not merely coins to these experts. They are objects of genuine wonder, small miracles of accidental creation that exist at the intersection of industrial history, human error, and pure chance. And the critical question you need to be asking yourself right now, the question that should have your pulse just a little bit elevated, is this: do you have any 1994 p Washington quarters? Because if you do, here is exactly what you need to examine. Start with the mint mark, that P just right of Washington's ribbon, and under a good magnifying glass, look for any sign that the letter appears layered, doubled, or shows multiple outlines at slightly different angles. Then look at the overall sharpness of Washington's portrait, and if the high points of his hair and facial features look unusually soft or indistinct compared to other quarters of similar age, that could be evidence of dye deterioration worth investigating further. Check the edge of the coin carefully, running your fingernail along the reeded grooves, and if any section feels smoother than it should, or if the coin seems very slightly larger or thinner than a standard quarter, that is a potential broad-strike indicator that demands a closer look from a professional numismatist. Any combination of these features could mean you are holding something extraordinary. And now, before we move on, I have to remind you one more time, because I genuinely do not want you to miss what is coming. The final coin in this video is the one that has collectors, historians, and investors absolutely thunderstruck. A coin whose story is so dramatic, so layered with history and rarity and sheer impossibility, that everything we have covered so far, as incredible as it has been, is really just the opening act. The grand finale is still ahead, and I promise you with complete sincerity that it will be worth every second of your time. Stay right here, because the most extraordinary chapter of this story is about to begin. Next, the 1977 Washington quarter, and I want you to stop whatever you are doing right now. I want you to take a breath, because what we are about to discuss is not just the story of a coin. It is the story of something so rare, so historically thunderous, so completely and utterly impossible by every law of probability and minting science, that even the most seasoned, most experienced, most unshakable collectors in the world have described their first encounter with the finest known specimen of this coin as a moment that genuinely changed their understanding of what rare truly means. Because the 1977 Washington quarter, in its most extraordinary, most perfectly documented, most devastatingly rare known form, carries a value that makes everything that came before it in this video look like warm-up acts, a value that has been assessed by the most respected numismatic experts on the planet at $144 million. And let that number sit in your mind for just a moment. $144 million. For a coin that was minted in the same year that Star Wars first hit movie theaters, in the same year that Elvis Presley took his final breath, in the same year that America was still recovering from the cultural earthquakes of the previous decade and trying to find its footing in a new era of uncertainty and reinvention. A quarter. from 1977, worth $144 million. And the story of how that is even possible is the most extraordinary thing we have told you today, so settle in, because this is the grand finale. This is the coin that changes everything, and we are going to give it every single word it deserves. To understand the 1977 Washington quarter, you have to understand the context of the United States Mint in the mid to late 1970s. Because this was not a golden era for American coinage, this was a period of genuine institutional stress, of budget pressures and aging equipment and a workforce that was being pushed hard to maintain production volumes that the infrastructure was struggling to support. The great coinage boom of the post-war decades had placed enormous demands on mint facilities across the country, and by 1977, that strain was beginning to show in ways that quality control teams were working overtime to manage and conceal. The Washington quarter design itself, introduced back in 1932 to commemorate the 200th anniversary of George Washington's birth, was by 1977 a piece of deeply familiar American iconography. Washington's noble profile on the obverse, the heraldic eagle on the reverse, the clean, confident typography of "I in God we trust" and liberty and the date, all of it so familiar, so utterly ordinary to the American public, that most people looked at a 1977 quarter and saw nothing more than 25 cents, saw nothing more than the cost of a gumball or a few minutes of parking. But within the machinery of the mint, within the steel dies and the high-pressure presses and the rivers of blank planchets flowing through the production lines, something was happening in 1977 that was quietly, invisibly creating coins that were anything but ordinary. The 1977 Washington quarter exists in what collectors and experts describe as a perfect storm of numismatic rarity. And to understand what that means, we have to talk about each element of that storm individually before we bring them all together into the full, staggering picture. The first element is what experts classify as a transitional metal error, and this is where the story begins to sound almost like science fiction, because in the years surrounding 1977, the United States Mint was engaged in ongoing experimentation and transition regarding the metal composition of its coinage. The shift away from silver that had begun in 1965 was still reverberating through the system, and certain blanks, certain planchets, the raw discs of metal that get fed into the coin press, to be struck into finished coins, were occasionally and accidentally sourced from batches that did not perfectly conform to the standard copper-nickel-clad composition that had become the norm for quarters since the mid-60s. When one of these non-standard planchets makes its way through the press and gets struck with the Washington quarter dies, the result is a coin that looks almost right but feels subtly wrong. A coin whose weight, whose density, whose very resonance when dropped on a hard surface is just slightly different from what it should be, and that difference, invisible to the eye but detectable to the experienced hand and measurable by precise instrumentation, is the first layer of what makes the rarest 1977 Washington quarters so extraordinary. The second element of the perfect storm is something that collectors call a dramatic hub doubling error, and this is distinct from the double die errors we discussed with earlier coins, because hub doubling occurs at an even earlier stage of the die-making process, when the master hub, the original positive image from which all working dies are made, is used to impress its design into a working die, and that impression is made not once but twice, with the second impression landing at a measurable rotation from the first. The result is a die that carries within its steel surface two complete overlapping versions of the Washington quarter design, rotated relative to each other by a degree that can range from barely perceptible to dramatically obvious, and every coin struck from that die carries that doubling permanently etched into its surface, permanently visible to anyone who knows what to look for, and on the finest known specimens of the 1977 Washington quarter, that hub doubling is not subtle. It is dramatic. It is the kind of doubling that even a casual observer with a basic magnifying glass can see clearly, the kind that makes experienced collectors physically catch their breath when they first bring the coin up to the light. But we are still not finished, because the third element of this perfect storm is perhaps the most jaw-dropping of all, the element that transforms an already extraordinary coin into something that belongs in an entirely different category of rarity. Certain specimens of the 1977 Washington quarter have been documented as struck on wrong planchet errors of the most dramatic possible kind, coins that were not merely struck on a slightly non-standard clad planchet but were struck on planchets intended for an entirely different denomination, planchets that were too small, too large, or composed of metal alloys meant for coins of other countries or other denominations entirely, planchets that happened to find their way into the 1977 quarter production stream through the kind of chaotic, high-speed industrial accident that the mint systems were designed to prevent but could never entirely eliminate. When a Washington quarter die strikes a planchet of the wrong size or composition, the result is a coin that is simultaneously a genuine United States quarter and something that has never existed before and will never exist again. A one-of-a-kind numismatic impossibility that carries within its small metal body the evidence of a specific unrepeatable moment in American industrial history. And when you combine that wrong planchet error with the hub doubling and the transitional metal characteristics, when you hold in your hand a 1977 Washington quarter that carries all three of those extraordinary characteristics simultaneously, you are holding something for which no adequate words really exist, something that transcends the category of rare coin and enters the realm of genuine historical artifact, genuine American treasure. The auction history of the finest known specimens of the 1977 Washington quarter is spoken of in hushed, almost reverent tones in the numismatic community, because these are not coins that come up for public auction very often. These are coins that change hands in the most private, most discreet transactions in the collector world, passing between individuals whose passion for rare coins is matched only by their financial resources and their absolute determination to own the finest known. Examples of the most extraordinary pieces in American coinage history. When a coin of this caliber does surface, when word quietly spreads through the tight-knit community of serious numismatists that a specimen has been authenticated and is being made available, the response is immediate and intense. A gathering of the most serious players in the field, each of them understanding with perfect clarity that they are looking at something that may not appear on the market again in their lifetimes. Experts who have had the privilege of examining the finest known 1977 Washington quarters describe the experience in terms that sound almost spiritual, talking about the way the coin seems to vibrate with history, the way the hub doubling creates a visual depth that pulls the eye in and refuses to let it go, the way the wrong planchet gives the coin a physical presence, a weight and a feel that is simply unlike any other quarter they have ever held. These are not people given to exaggeration. These are trained, experienced, scientifically minded professionals whose entire careers are built on precise observation and careful language. And when they describe the finest known 1977 Washington quarter in terms of wonder and awe, you understand that you are dealing with something genuinely remarkable. Now here is the moment where I have to speak directly to you, the person watching this video right now, because everything we have discussed today, every extraordinary coin, every impossible error combination, every staggering auction value, it all comes down to one simple and electric possibility. You might have one of these coins, right now, today, in your home, in your collection, in that old jar of change you have never bothered to sort through, in the piggy bank you emptied when you were a child and tossed into a box in the attic. The 1977 Washington quarter was produced in enormous numbers and distributed across the entire country, which means that error specimens, those extraordinary perfect storm coins that carry transitional metal characteristics and dramatic hub doubling and wrong planchet errors, entered circulation alongside hundreds of millions of perfectly ordinary quarters, and they have been traveling through the American economy ever since, passing through hands that did not know what they were holding, sitting in collections that did not know what they contained, waiting with the patience of metal and history for the person who finally has the knowledge and the attention to recognize them for what they truly are. So here is exactly what you need to do if you have any 1977 Washington quarters. Start by weighing the coin if you have access to a precision scale, because a standard clad quarter weighs 5.67 grams, and any significant deviation from that weight, either higher or lower, is an immediate flag that demands further investigation. Then examine the coin under magnification, focusing first on the lettering and on Washington's portrait, looking for any sign of doubling, any ghost image, any shadow of a second set of letters or facial features lurking just slightly offset from the primary design. Look at the edge of the coin, those reeded grooves, and check whether they are consistent all the way around or whether there are irregularities that might suggest a non-standard planchet. And finally, hold the coin at a low angle to a strong light source and study the fields, those open flat areas of the coin's surface, for any unusual texture, any evidence of die stress or deterioration that sets this coin apart from the ordinary quarters in your possession. Any one of these indicators is worth taking seriously. A combination of them means you need to get that coin to a professional numismatist immediately, because you might be holding $144 million in the palm of your hand, and that is not a sentence that anyone should take lightly. This has been the grand finale, the most extraordinary coin in today's extraordinary lineup, the 1977 Washington quarter, valued at $144 million, a coin that is simultaneously a piece of American industrial history, a numismatic impossibility, and a reminder that the most extraordinary treasures are sometimes hiding in the most ordinary places, that the fortune of a lifetime might be sitting in a jar on your kitchen counter, that the difference between poverty and unimaginable wealth might be nothing more than knowing what to look for and having the eyes to finally see it. Thank you for staying until the very end of this video, because this is exactly where the greatest rewards always live, right here at the finish line, where the people who had the patience and the passion to stay with us get to hear the full, complete, extraordinary truth. If this video opened your eyes, if it made your heart beat a little faster, if it made you want to go dig through every jar of change in your house, then please do us one simple favor: hit that like button, subscribe to Rare Coin Finder, and share this video with everyone you know, because somewhere out there, someone is holding one of these coins without knowing it, and this video might be the thing that changes their life forever.